Welcome to another episode of Sanford Says. My name is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer, and I have the pleasure today of having Pasha Baker with us. Pasha is the Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association, Incorporated. Welcome, Pasha.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good morning. Thank you for having us.
We're so happy that you're here. It's been a while. We were trying to coordinate this, and then COVID-19 happened, and we have the public now available to come into City Hall, and we are just so glad to have you here to share information about the wonderful programming, exhibits, partnerships, and relationships that the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association has. So let's get right into it, Pasha. Like I said, you are the Director and Chief Executive Officer, so you've got all the good news to share with us today.
Yes.
The right person to talk to. So please, let's just do an intro about what you do and your mission.
And I think this is very fitting, especially what's going on in the world and our state, our country at this time. So once again, thank you so much for having us. The Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association, Incorporated, encompasses 6 entities, which have 3 museums: the Goldsboro Museum, which tells the history of Goldsboro, Florida; the Crooms Academy Museum, which encompasses the history of Crooms Academy, our historically black school here in the city of Sanford and in Goldsboro. Then we have the Francis Coleman Oliver Cultural Arts and Goldsboro Welcome Center. That museum is dedicated to local black artists and local to Goldsboro and to the city of Sanford. And that is our more contemporary collection and not historical. After that, we have 3 museums: the Goldsboro Heritage and Art Garden. That art garden, we know that Goldsboro, the community where I'm from, I'm 3 generations there, is a food desert, meaning that people do not have a lot of access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Also, that we worked with the health department, and we know that the people in that area were experiencing diabetes and heart disease due to lack of nutritious fruits and vegetables being available and access. Yes. So we have the Goldsboro Heritage and Art Garden. We have 3 gardens. The gardens are located behind the museums. A few years back, during President Obama's first term, First Lady Michelle Obama had a movement called Let's Move. And behind it, because a lot of museums have a lot of empty space, we want to be more than a museum. We are a community partner, a program partner that outreaches to a lot of people. The museums were actually founded, and the association was founded by my aunt, Miss Frances Coleman Oliver. She collected everything in those museums for over 50 plus years to keep the history of Goldsboro alive. And we'll go into a little bit of Goldsboro later, the history of Goldsboro. But she kept those monuments and everything so that the history be told. And we see in today and what's going on and reflective in our culture that history does repeat itself. So if you don't know the history, then you're likely to repeat it. However, we have some differences. My aunt is a baby boomer. I am a millennial. So I believe in bringing the museum to the people. She believes if you build it, they will come. So we have to have a good mix there. Since I have taken over, now we bring the museums to the people. So we're excited about that. And one of those things is those gardens, as I was mentioning. Yeah. And so with those 3 gardens, and we also partnered, we have a long history with the city of Sanford, Goldsboro. And it's not always a pretty history. And some of the things that were done were very bad. And so we have to acknowledge those, and we have to make baby steps to correct those. So one of the things that we did with those gardens, the produce is all organic, and it is nothing out there but sun, water, and God. I even had the dirt imported for that garden. So it is very, very high level. And a couple of our restaurants here downtown actually are 5-star chefs and Michelin trained chefs and cordon bleu chefs from France. They have very, very high specifications of the type of materials that they cook with. So 6 of the restaurants downtown Sanford actually come from our garden. So what that means is, 1, The museums become sustainable because we provide them fresh fruits and vegetables for those downtown restaurants. 2, we're being more environmental because it travels less than a mile. So less carbon dioxide for the air that you and I breathe. 3rd, it is farm to table. So it is a win-win-win. It's a win for the community. It's a win for those business restaurants. And it's a win for bridging that gap. And so we like the win-win-win. So those are a little bit about our Heritage Garden. Some of our restaurants that we use are Tennessee Truffle, the Smiling Bison, Chantel's, Corner Cafe, the Picnic Project on Sundays. We actually give fresh produce and to the homeless so that they eat well as well, because they're known for not eating well because they don't have it on a consistent basis. So if it's one day a week, we do what we can to help our community and just to be of service.
Yes.
And then we have Page Jackson Cemetery, which was bought from the state of Florida, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And I am the only museum in the country that has purchased a cemetery from the state. And so my museum actually was filed with the county, with Seminole County. It has the governor's, which was Governor Scott at the time, and his entire cabinet's original signature, plus the state seal of Florida on the deed, because we did have to purchase it. The Page Jackson Cemetery is one that is very humbling, because I have written records on Page Jackson Cemetery from 1831. Remember, we're just now celebrating Juneteenth, which was Friday. Happy Juneteenth, Lisa.
Happy Juneteenth, Pasha.
And so that was the date, 1865, June 19th, 1865, was the date of those that were last enslaved in Galveston, Texas, were released and given their freedom papers. Do you know when we were liberated here in the state of Florida, Lisa?
Give me a hint.
So actually it was just 1 month before. So Florida did not do any better. Yes, it was 1 month before. So it was May 20th, 1865, which those that were enslaved in the state of Florida were given their freedom papers.
Well, thank you for that information, and that's what
now
these podcasts are for.
Yes,
these podcasts are
so
for
if
learning.
you're ever on Jeopardy and they ask you when was the state of Florida liberated from enslavement, now you know, May 20th, 1865. All right. So we talk about Page Jackson Cemetery. Remember I said we have the written records from 1831. So that means there were enslaved that were buried in that area, on that cemetery and on those grounds, as well as those that were looking for freedom and were looking for the Underground Railroad is people that were buried there as well. So if we did archaeological testing on that ground, the burial grounds, we can go into the 1700s or maybe even earlier. People that were buried in that ground. In the grounds now, the state of Florida seized the property exactly 100 years ago now this year. And so it was seized in 1920 because it said that blacks could not own property. It was seized during Jim Crow laws. However, for a cemetery, they forgot about the cemetery and left it neglected. And for about 40 or 50 years, since 2020, back into the 70s, we can go on written records, the city of Sanford and the county both did not take ownership of the cemetery. So it left it neglected for a long time. So you can imagine 100 years of growth during a cemetery. So that cemetery is about $500,000 cleanup. We are still working hard to get that cleaned up.
I think you're working with another nonprofit, and no, you're working with the city of Sanford to get this cleaned up. No, okay. So so that is a huge effort upon your organization.
That is
correct. And I'm sure you need volunteers. And
that is correct. Unfortunately, because of the type of growth, it is heavy duty lifting. You can imagine a tree that's had 100 years to grow. So, and the type of support that you need. So it needs bulldozers, not really volunteers.
Okay.
So it needs bulldozers, tractors, the saws itself, because of the type of growth that it's experiencing.
Yes.
we would have to have a saw machine on site because the saws would break probably every 2 days.
Well, I believe that it's in good care now. I would say that.
Thank you. So we worked with the Boys and the Boy Scouts of Central Florida and of some local troops to do some things, but a lot of it's going to require a lot of funds and a lot of professional because we don't want to disturb the grave site.
Right.
Yeah, because we still want to respect that and return honor and dignity to those. And a lot of veterans are out there. A lot of Civil War veterans going back to the Civil War, actually. And I'll tell you another history fact. Every Memorial Day and every Veterans Day, there is a Good Samaritan that goes out to that cemetery and places American flags on all the heroes of the veterans of Civil War, World War I, World War II, all the veterans that are located in that cemetery.
Yes.
And I've never seen that person.
Let me ask you, is it a private cemetery, or can people, if they want to go out there, I know you say it does need a lot of work, but is there a way that people can honor those
unfortunately, not at this time. And that was the issue with the state of Florida. They actually did not know work was being done on that cemetery because they are not here. They're in Tallahassee. Yeah. And so that was such a liability to the state of Florida, as well as a liability to my organization. No, we do not permit visitors on the property because it's in such bad shape. So there are graves that and holes out there that are 6 foot deep. And remember, in Florida, we have a lot of hurricanes, so we have a lot of fallen trees, a lot of brush out there that you may not see. And if you fell into a hole,
right, that wouldn't be good.
No, that would not be good. As well as a lot of wild animals, because 100 years of growth, we are in Florida. It gets a little warm outside, and so things start to move.
And so from what I'm hearing, Pasha, is that now, I mean, the cemetery has had a lot of rich history.
And that's located in our museums as well. Yes. So the people that are located in that cemetery that are pioneers of Goldsboro, educators of Goldsboro, heroes of the area, veterans that fought in our wars to make it what we have today and to make sure we had those freedoms, enslaved that were looking for the Underground Railroad that got lost. Remember, we had no GPS. So people would easily get lost and get taken in by the Indians that were located, the original inhabitants of this land. And that's where they were buried as well. And so that's why we do have those written records. So the cemetery, we're looking for a couple of years on that one still that to be actual. And we'll start to do programs coming probably next winter 21. So we have a project plan now for benches out there. We have an information center out there already. Now we're starting to clear the pathway so that people can actually visit their loved ones, because that was an issue as well.
All right.
Next, we have our Goldsboro Art Square. I love the Goldsboro Art Square because remember, like I said, we are we want to bring the museum to the people. So our Goldsboro Art Square is a museum without walls, a museum without borders. And so those are our beautiful pictures that are placed outside, some by local Goldsboro artists. We have one, Mr. Raven Lawson, that does a lot of our artwork on our fences outside. And we have it in our Goldsboro Art Square so that people we have located on historical Goldsboro Boulevard. We have our fire and police department. We also have a few schools, Goldsboro Elementary and Crooms Academy High School. So when you're going down the street, even though you may never step foot in our museums, you still see the history and you still get art every day. And so sometimes early in the morning, like I just left the museums today, we'll see people that drive by and they feel emotional because they see the pictures and they get that piece from the art that it brings them, that creative side. As well as our first responders see a lot of things during the day. And so they are able to disconnect and see that piece and get out of that moment and see the artwork that's on in that art square. We have our outdoor movies in that art square as well, where we have our big screen at, and that's one of our programs, just like the Goldsboro Heritage and Art program. This year, without COVID, we would have done 100 events and programs. Without COVID. This year, since the beginning of the year, we've already executed over 50 plus programs, events, and exhibitions.
So for those listeners that may not know, they may not even be in Sanford or have been to our city. Let's share just where it is located.
So the history of Goldsboro, is located here in the city of Sanford. Goldsboro was incorporated 1891. So a little short time after the Emancipation Proclamation and after the last were enslaved during Juneteenth in 1891. And Goldsboro is actually the brother city to Edenville. So Edenville was founded by Joseph Clark in 1877, the same year as the city of Sanford was incorporated. In Edenville, Goldsboro was a few years later in 1891. His brother, William Clark, founded Goldsboro. The difference between incorporating and why we mention Goldsboro on such a high level, because back then, here you have two black men, two brothers, that not only lived off the land, but incorporated entire cities just like you operate the cities today. So you had a city, Goldsboro was its own city that had its own mayor, its own alderman, its own tax collector, everything, how you operate cities, businesses, chamber of commerce, everything that you have today. So not too long after enslavement was over. So remember, during enslavement, we weren't allowed to read and write. But here you have two black men shortly after incorporated entire cities here in Central Florida. And so that is the beauty of the story that we tell. And that is the history. And in 1920, what happened is a man by the name of Mr. Forrest Lake, who was the former mayor of Sanford, he actually embezzled so much money from the city of Sanford that the city of Sanford went bankrupt and was barely able to survive that. He was also a state legislator. He drafted a bill, wiped out the township of Goldsboro, wiped out the city of Goldsboro, and took all of its money and put the charter with the city of Sanford. And so, of course, the people of Goldsboro were not happy. There was a 40-year plus lawsuit between the city of Sanford and the state of Florida. And then the state of Florida Supreme Court said, well, we didn't do it. And then the city of Sanford said, okay, we didn't do it as well. There are two reasons why the Goldsboro is not a city. Because at the time, Goldsboro was a thriving black city. It was during Jim Crow laws, and the city of Sanford was very jealous. Like I said, its mayor had embezzled all of its money. Two, because of land. Just like still today, all over the world, land is a precious commodity. And so in order for the city of Sanford to be larger into what it is now, it took Seminole Heights as well, that had its own charter, as well as the city of Goldsboro, both of them to incorporate in what you see now today as the city of Sanford. So like I said, there is a long history. It is not always pretty, but we tell the history because the history has to be accurate. And as well as one of the things that we have at the museums is that we want to make sure that history is told, so history does not repeat itself. Yes. And it's important to know your history. So of those 40 plus events, right now we do have a traveling exhibition that is from the state of Georgia. It's from Savannah, Georgia, and it's traveled all across the country. And what it is our Geechee Gullah exhibition. And so that one
sounds interesting.
Yeah, so Geechee Gullah is from West Africa, and it's the only part of our culture that has sustained over 400 plus years during enslavement. Remember, blacks came from, and Africans, we are African ancestry, we came from the west coast of Africa. Not just any part of Africa. Those that were enslaved, our history dates back to the west coast of Africa. And from there, remember, we were enslaved in this country. But when you took us from our native homeland, remember, we had families, we had businesses, we were tribal leaders, we were royalty, we had our own societies and tribes and our own language and our own heritage and culture. So the only thing that has sustained during our 401 years from this country, from the country that we've came from, is that exhibition. So we have original where they original language that we wrote in. We have our woodwork that we have that when we came from West Africa, that has remained. And the people that were enslaved that brought this from West Africa are the Geechee Gullah tribes, and those were located, and they were enslaved in South Carolina. And so the Carolinas is where that group is, and that has remained throughout the 400 plus years. So in the museum right now, we have over a 400 plus history exhibition right now, and we have a lot of exhibitions that we have, traveling exhibitions. I believe, Lisa, before we were talking, we had our UCF Riches crew come over to see our exhibition on Oculus, which took you back in time to the Harlem Renaissance. So you got to go to the Apollo, you drive the cars, and it was all through Oculus. So it was virtual reality meets history. Yeah. And we do those type of things. We're a museum that translates to out the box, such as our Goldsboro Art Square, such as our programming, such as our exhibitions that are very fitting for the times now. And in that exhibition, we actually do have enslavement shackles that were put on for over 400 plus years old. Yeah. And they are still, it is very powerful and moving exhibition. So those are some of the programs that we have. We take this to the schools. We were able to do a lot of the Black History programs for Seminole County Public Schools, for Seminole State, and we have a lot of programs that we partner with. The Seminole County Museum of History are great partners. The Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. are great partners. We've hosted them here. We go up there and we send exhibitions as well. So we are a local cultural tourism that brings up a lot of visitors to the city of Sanford and to the area of Goldsboro to make it a catalyst for a city that was neglected, now that is surviving and thriving again on its own. And so we're very happy to speak about that. Yes. And it's always a pleasure, Lisa.
Pasha, you manage the daily operations and funding for the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association Incorporated, and obviously do a wonderful job with the wealth of information that you do know about history. And that is the purpose of these podcasts, is for all of us to learn about history and information, events, and whatnot. And we view the Goldsboro Museum and the Historical Association as just an added benefit to the city of Sanford. We are a diverse city. We embrace that. And we invite our visitors, residents, to go over and visit the Westside.
It's all free.
Yeah, there it is. It's all free. And we were mentioning earlier, I'd wanted to mention the address, but here it is.
Yes.
It's 1211 Historical Goldsboro Boulevard in Sanford, Florida. And
that's 5 of our entities. Of course, the cemetery is a little bit down. It's less than a mile away from the...
Right.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to visit there, but you can definitely see it.
Yes, and please go to the website. Go to their website, which is...
Facebook and Instagram, please.
Facebook, Instagram, the GoldsboroMuseum.com. I've been to the website. Is incredible, great photos, so much information.
And digital exhibitions during COVID.
Yes.
So you can get the same history as well. Check out our Facebook Live feeds. You can scroll down on our Facebook Live pages. You can actually order our books off of Amazon.com as well to also get the history, but also support your local museum.
That's right. And history, art, and culture are so important to a community. Like you said, we must know our history.
It's the lifeblood of a community.
You must not forget the past in order to not repeat it in the future. So thank you so much, Pasha Baker, Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association, located at 1211 Historical Goldsboro Boulevard in the great city of Sanford. And their phone number, if you wanted to reach out, is...
Definitely. So you can reach us via the About Us page or the Visit Us page on our website, which is www.goldsboromuseum.com. And people always ask me, why did they name the township Goldsboro? We have no idea. We do not. Eatonville, we do know, was named after General Eaton.
Wow.
Goldsboro, we do not know the name.
Maybe because the word gold is
very significant,
so
but I don't know of any gold in Sanford or Goldsboro.
No.
Maybe there was a gold rush we're missing here.
Yeah.
But maybe.
So it's very interesting because I've moved here. I think it's been like 9 years since I've been in the city, but respect families and generations that have been here for generations past, and must always remember history and keep telling those stories. And the mission of the Westside community, the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association, is to enrich the quality of life through the history and culture of Goldsboro.
Definitely.
And so thank you again.
And
Pasha.
I do want to mention one of our things that we pride ourselves on is our vision and our mission, that we can solve modern day problems through the humanities of yesterday. The same way they did it yesterday is the same way we do it today. Not much has changed, but the technology, like these podcasts, right?
Right. So, and I know there's several partnerships that have worked with, you mentioned them earlier.
Yeah. So we're very happy for the Florida Humanities Networks, the State of Florida Humanities Arm, the State of Florida Cultural Arts and Heritage Division, the Smithsonian Museum, IMLS, the Institute of Museum Librarian Services, all great partners, all that have helped us through the way. The FOPN Network, the Florida African American Heritage Preservation Network. So we're connected to all of the African American museums within the state of Florida, and it shows our diverse history, as well as with other museums like the Maitland Arts Museum. I am giving some things over to the Orlando Regional History Museum, which is the largest museum in the city of Orlando, historical museum in the city of Orlando, and here in Central Florida. We partner with them as well. So they're getting ready to do an Ocoee exhibit on the Ocoee Massacre, and we'll give them a few items as well.
Yes. So Pasha, again, I want to thank you. And Pasha is also a graduate of the City of Sanford Citizens Academy. So
that was an awesome time. We had good times, Lisa. Good times.
Yes. So and that's something we've learned and talked about previously as the Citizens Academy about the City of Sanford. So do you want to mention at all? We talked about real quickly the StoryCorps program. Is that something that you just want people want to hear?
You can actually. You could download them from the StoryCorps program, but definitely go to our Facebook page if you are able. Go to our website. We do love all that interaction. Please say hi on all the stories. We leave those stories for you. Right. And I do have another historical fact for you. Just one more, just in case you were ever on Jeopardy, Lisa. Yeah. Just in case.
And any of your
listeners are ever on Jeopardy. One of our stories is, I told you about Mayor Lake Forest, how he embezzled and bankrupted the city of Sanford, stole the charter from the city of Goldsboro. It is said that he died on the streets of Sanford, homeless and penniless. And he is the only white man that is buried in Page Jackson Cemetery.
That is a very interesting fact.
The only one, yes.
And we're talking about what time frame here?
Remember, that is during segregation.
Okay. All right.
And Jim Crow. Yep.
So we must, again, remember our history in order to not repeat it. And thank you so much for being here again, Pasha. This has been a wealth of information, and you are an addition to our community, the Goldsboro Museum, and that's what makes the city of Sanford such a great place to visit. The hours of operation for the museum is on their website, and it is free admission. So if you're a history buff, please come down. Family friendly, bring your children, and enjoy the museum and all of its programming and exhibits. This is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford. Thank you for listening to Sanford Says. We'll be back next time with another episode. You can find this podcast wherever you subscribe to your podcast. And thank you again. Be well. Stay safe.